This podcast contains adult language. Welcome to the James Chambers Show. I'm your host for this podcast, James Chambers, and I am sitting alone in my studio just for a moment. We are anticipating being able to do a full episode this week with Kate, so hopefully she will be in here, if not tonight, then maybe the next day or two. But either way, I wanted to sit down and just express my thoughts about some of the events of this last week. This week, we've had some of the worst political violence we've seen in the last, 40 years, since the uprisings in the 60s and the civil rights movements that, of course, led to quite a lot of violence on both sides, actually. And that is a legitimate both sides. We've had a racist, utter fucking racist, terrible person try to break into an African-American church, but was unable to do so. And so he went to a grocery store that was close and walked in and randomly shot two black people because they were black. And he, of course, was, he's been apprehended, and he is a horrible human being. And just the fact that that kind of racism and that kind of violence can still happen in this country we all know it's there. We all know it's there, but it's just disturbing when you see it on its face. When you see the violent rhetoric, the undercurrents of hate and bigotry just bubble up to the point where you've got this, and I've pointed to Dylan Roof before, but I'm going to point to him again because he was a racist little fuck. And, going into a black church, sitting down for an hour or two of prayers, a prayer time and fellowship time, only to turn around and literally shoot everybody or almost everybody in the room. It was such a deep violation of the sanctity. And I know that the church is the people, it's not the building, but still, this was a sanctified sort of fellowship time for these people in this church. And he destroyed that for them. And that's horrible. And what this man tried to do this week was much the same. He would have walked into that black church. He would have walked in and killed as many people as he could have. Then, of course, we have a guy who is an avowed white supremacist, and his friends and coworkers, in fact, one of his bosses actually said that that's how he identified, was a white supremacist who thought that Trump was essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he was, the Messiah. He was the great white hope. He's the guy, and everybody who disagrees with him are evil and horrible people. And so he sent pipe bombs through the mail, 14 devices, all to people who were critical of President Trump, and all who were either involved theoretically, hypothetically, in conspiracy theories like George Soros and Bill and Hillary Clinton, because they've killed 100 people. All the crazy bullshit that gets spewed from the far right, complete propaganda machines. He internalized all of that and sent pipe bombs to people, including Barack Obama, Robert De Niro, James Clapper, like I said, both Bill and Hillary Clinton, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and the list goes on. Now, thankfully, none of those devices activated. None of those devices actually detonated. At least one of them was functionally broken somehow. Some part of it did not work, so it couldn't have detonated, which is great. That's safe. It's at least good for them. But the fact that this person has been so emboldened to do that kind of politically motivated violence, there is a term for that. That's called domestic terrorism. This man, he is a domestic terrorist. There should be no ifs, ands, or buts about that. He used threats of violence for a political reason, to stoke fear and to stoke hatred and anger and fear of violence and retribution. This is without a religious context, it would have been the complete perfect encapsulation of what domestic terrorism is, or what terrorism is in general. It's designed to stoke fear and terror in people. And if you are a big popular left-wing person, or even just a major Trump critic, the fear is that you can wind up with a fucking bomb on your front doorstep. That's terrorism. And it's disgusting. He's a horrible person. Some people are going to argue that he is mentally deficient, and some people actually have said that he did act like he had some mental disabilities. It's possible, but that doesn't, I'm sorry. At this point, he is functional enough to do all of the things he's done in his history. He was a lightweight bodybuilder or a part-time bodybuilder. He worked in strip clubs. He's run in with the law before. And he's got now multiple counts of felonies and all kinds of stuff. So the guy's going to go away for hopefully life. But he, in fact, again, sent explosives to people's businesses and homes. That's terrifying. Now we go to what I believe, if I understand correctly, it is the worst anti-Semitic act of violence in this country's history. As far as I understand, when another white supremacist, racist, anti-Semite walks into a synagogue and murders 11 people, and as well wounds 4 police officers in the process who were responding. One of those people was actually a Holocaust survivor. They survived the Holocaust only to be shot by an anti-Semite in America in 2018. If just framing that question or just framing that scenario is just mind-boggling to me. It's disturbing that we still are living in a day and age where Jewish people in this country still have to have a tiny little bit of fear, and now more than a little bit of fear, about anti-Semitism bubbling up to the point where somebody would walk into a synagogue and shoot and murder 11 people, and would have done more if the police hadn't have shown up as when they did. And he would have shot more people had he more bullets and he had more guns. I mean, the whole thing is disturbing. This week has been just tragic in this country. And it's immediately before the midterms. It's 6 days till the midterms. And all this happens. And what's the reaction from our illustrious president? He continues on his campaign rallies. It's mind-boggling that that's his reaction. And it's mind-boggling that the GOP's reaction to that has been whitewash. It's been milquetoast. It's been so predictably bland that it's essentially an endorsement to him. It's an endorsement to his nonchalant attitude about these horrible events that have happened in our country. It's reminiscent of Charlottesville. You know, there's good people on both sides. Well, one side are liberal protesters and Antifa, who tend to be more anarchists. We as progressives don't necessarily claim Antifa as a group. We agree with anti-fascism because everybody should. I mean, that's pretty fucking obvious. But on the right, you have neo-Nazis and white supremacists chanting, "Jews will not replace us." There is no equivalence here. There is no equivalence to liberal protests and white supremacists marching in the streets. There are not good people on both sides. One is, these guys are mad because they're on the left and we have no access to the levers of power and we're being vote suppressed and our world in this country is kind of shitty right now. And on the other side, you have a bunch of angry white polo-wearing motherfuckers who are angry and willing to murder somebody with a car because you will not replace us. You know who the you is? It's you. Anybody with a brown skin color, anybody with a different race, anybody with a non-Christian religious background. You. It's still a racist slogan. You will not replace us. And many of them were explicitly anti-Semitic. Jews will not replace us. There is no good people on both sides. And that's essentially what he's doing in this scenario as well. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. And I hope, I just needed to kind of vent that a little bit and to just put that out on the table. Because it's difficult to internalize all of this stuff without being able to externalize it to everybody else. And I know that you all listening, I know you all are intelligent, well-read people who are on top of this. But I think the whole purpose of this show is to help put things in context and put things in perspective. And that's a perspective on these three major events that have happened this week. Now, the one thing that I'm going to tack onto this, it really struck a nerve for me, and that is the president in an interview with Axios on HBO, which will air on Sunday, I believe, so in 5 days, there was a clip that was that's made the rounds now, where the president says he is interested and willing to and wants to, and in fact said he will use an executive order to eliminate birthright citizenship. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's embedded in the 14th Amendment. Birthright citizenship means that if you are born on American soil, you are an American citizen with all of the rights and benefits that affords you. That is something that has been there for a very long time, for well over 100 years worth of judicial precedent. This has been argued in the Supreme Court, and it was actually to help bring immigrants into America. This would, back in the 1800s, when we wanted to bring immigrants here, that was an incentive to simply say, hey, you come here, you're an immigrant. Yeah, we get it. But your kids, they're all going to be American citizens. And that's a hell of an incentive. And that has stood in precedent for well over 100 years. Now, there are challenges to it. That's fine. We can get into that at some point if we feel it's relevant. But the bigger issue here is that our president had even considered floating the possibility, the barest bone possibility, that he could alter the United States Constitution with an executive order. That should put everybody on the fucking floor. That should make you really uncomfortable that this man has said that he would be willing to change one of the amendments to the Constitution with just a wave of a pen to take away a right completely. Now, of course, even Paul Ryan and other pundits have come out and said, well, he can't really do that. I mean, I know he wants to, but he really just can't. It's going to be a court battle and blah, blah, blah. Fine. Maybe, I don't know if there's any system that truly prevents him from doing it, but in his addled fucking brain, in his mind, he's literally considering doing what a dictator does. I mean, he's already been very, very chummy with dictators. He was with Xi Jinping when Xi Jinping changed China's election law and essentially made himself president for life. Donald Trump joked kind of that maybe we should try that sometime. He also joked that maybe, it'll be 2 terms, maybe 3, maybe longer. Who knows? Over 52% of Republicans are willing to hold off and suspend the 2020 presidential election. And 56 of Republicans are willing to suspend the 2020 presidential election if the GOP and Congress agree with it. Over half of the Republicans in this country are willing to allow a president to suspend one of our fundamental rights, one of our fundamental constitutional rights. This should scare everybody, whether you're conservative or a liberal or somewhere in between. This is the shaking of the pillars of our democracy. This is no joke. And the fact that our president casually can say, well, whoever they are, have told me that I can do this. And by this, I mean alter the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Let's say just hypothetically, let's throw out a thought experiment. So he's been chipping away at the norms and values of our country and been doing it for 3 years now. Let's just say that he was able to, well, take away birthright citizenship. Okay, he stripped that away. Somehow there isn't a civil war at that point. But, who knows? What's next? We're looking at the Fourth Amendment, due process. That's a big one. You don't support Trump? All of a sudden, due process can go right out the window. What about the First Amendment? That's probably first. He already thinks the mainstream news is fake news and the mainstream press are all fake and phony and liars. So why should we have a free press if they're all going to be fakes and liars? Done with them. So you can gut the First Amendment. You can gut the Fourth Amendment. You can gut, we can go all the way down to the line to the impeachment clauses. We don't need those. And then at some point we recognize that, or he recognizes that, what's the point of having, a Senate and a House of Representatives if, the people don't really matter at this point? I know what's best for them. My cronies in the White House know what's best for them. So dismantle Congress. Is that extreme? Yeah, but it's already, the precedent has been set. By nibbling away at the law and by nibbling away at our constitutional system, it becomes a slippery slope downwards towards totalitarianism. And that's where this man wants to live. When he was in North Korea, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said that, wow, I love that all of his people, being Kim Jong-un, all of his people were bowing and cheering and clapping, and they're all praising him, and everybody's in lockstep, and it's all in line. It's perfect and it's amazing. And man, wouldn't that be great if it could happen here? Whew. That's dude, your authoritarianism is showing at this point. Even, like I said, all he said was, I'm looking at it. I'm thinking about it. They tell me I can do it. And I will. And the reporter pushed him a little and said, have you talked to litigators about this? Have you talked to attorneys about this? Yeah, I did. They told me it's okay. They told me I can do it. No American president ever would even think about bypassing Congress to change the Constitution of the United States. But this man will. Whether or not it's going to happen, who knows? Probably won't. Realistically, it probably won't. But the fact that he thought about it is what really kills me. And it should scare you, and it should scare all of us. I don't care what your political objectives are. I don't care what your political policies are and your social beliefs are. That was really, really scary. I hope that I've been able to help frame that in a way. This was not a flippant discussion. This was not a flippant. What he said was not off the cuff that he never thought of it before. That's totally new. No. It's not a campaign rally where he just says some crazy shit and people go, yeah, it's just him. No. This was something that he's thought about before and has actually thought about before. We know that back in 2015, I believe, it's something that had come up before. So there's a little bit of legitimacy here. He could actually make this attempt. And that's an undermining of democracy. It's an undermining of our country. And it's our American president who is undermining the values and the structural foundation of America and doing it intentionally with a grin on his face. And that about sums up for my thoughts for today. I tell you what, friends, the only way to manage this situation is to stomp and scream and talk and get people to listen and vote. We have 6 days until the midterms. Go and vote. You can, every state, on the state attorney general's office website, you can find ballots. You can find all the information. You can go to votesaveamerica.org and you can find all that information as well. Find your local polling place. Make sure you're registered. Make sure your family is registered. Make sure all of your friends are registered. Doesn't matter what party. It doesn't matter what ideology. They need to vote. Everybody needs to vote. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, I want to hear them. Drop down in the section below, drop a comment, subscribe to the show, share the show, get the word out. We need to be motivated. We can't take this lying down. This president will not erode any more of the pillars of our democracy, nor will he erode the norms and values of our country. We as Americans have an obligation to say truth to power, and we are going to speak truth to power on this show and every other area where we can. And I'm happy and I'm proud of all of you guys for listening. And please, like I said, go vote. You're awesome. Love you guys. We'll talk to you next time, hopefully with my co-host. And this was the James Chambers Show. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.